or anger, so how could they cause such different emotions? His colleague Philip Bard agreed, concluding that bodily responses and emotions occur separately but simultaneously. And this idea is the base of the Cannon-Bard theory of emotion. In other words, a racing heart doesn't cause fear, nor does the feeling of fear result in a racing heart. Rather, both things just happen together. Today, most psychologists agree that our emotions are also tangled up with our cognition. Whether or not we're afraid of a dog on the sidewalk depends a lot on whether we're interpreting the animal's behavior as threatening or friendly, and probably also what our personal history with dogs is. In the 1960s, American psychologists Stanley Schachter and Jerome Singer interpreted this idea that cognition can define emotion into what they called their two-factor theory. They believe that to experience emotion, you must both feel physiological arousal and cognitively label that arousal. And again, please remember that in psychology, arousal is different from how you're used to using it. Here, arousal can be thought of as activation or stress or even energy, an increase in reactivity or wakefulness that primes us for some kind of action. So sometimes arousal can spill over from one event to the next. Say you just watched a heated soccer match and you're all revved up and someone looks at you funny. Suddenly, you might label that lingering arousal as anger, and the next thing you know, the whole stadium is one big rioting aggro chain reaction. Schachter and Singer examined this so-called spillover effect with an experiment that involved an unusual combination of college guys and drugs. First, they injected a bunch of college guys with the hormone epinephrine. This is basically adrenaline, and as you yourself have probably experienced, it induces a level of physiological activation that can go any number of ways emotionally. But then they threw a curveball. Some of the subjects were told to expect symptoms of feeling all revved up, while others were told the injection wouldn't produce any effects at all. Then, after being injected, each subject was left in a waiting room, and with them in the room was an actor, pretending to wait as well, and acting either all jerky and irritated or super happy and euphoric. So the dude's just sitting there, jacked up on this hormone, and his heart is racing, and his cheeks are all flushed. And in the case where the subject was told not to expect any effects, the study found that the guy would actually adopt the emotion of the actor in the room, becoming happy or testy depending on how the person was acting. His body was having a physiological response to the hormone, but he ended up effectively deciding which emotion he was feeling. But if the subject had been told that the injection would make him feel all pumped up, he'd actually report very little emotion, just because he was blaming that racing heart and flushed face on the drug, not a particular state of mind. So in terms of the two-factor theory, the cause of physiological arousal had to be identified before a person could feel and label the response as a particular emotion. To Schachter, Singer, and their disciples, this meant that arousal spurs emotion, but cognition directs it. And yet, some researchers, like Polish-born American psychologist Robert Zients, contend that all emotions are the result of just putting a name to our arousal. He suggests that many of our emotional reactions occur separately or even before our cognition kicks in. If you hear a sudden crash outside your window, you'll automatically react with a jolt before your brain has the chance to think, gee, what was that crazy noise? Should I feel startled? This is in part because when it comes to emotions, it's thought that our brains process sensory input by two different kinds of routes, top-down or bottom-up approaches, and neuroscientists can actually chart these two pathways in action. Some bigger, more complex feelings like love and hatred take what we call the high road. Say you read a love letter from your sweetie. You can pin that mushy feeling in your heart to the sensory stimulus of reading, traveling from your eyes all the way through your thalamus to your brain's cortex. There it can be analyzed by means of your cognitive process, perhaps consciously, perhaps implicitly, and labeled with like, oh, it's so sweet, at which point it heads to your limbic system, the central brain region that drives emotion and motivation, and at that point, you respond with all the warm fuzzies. Other emotions like simple likes, aversions, and fears don't have to involve actual thinking and take a sort of low-road neural path, like that crash outside or a baseball flying at your head. Such jump-out-of-your-chair stimuli bypass the cortex and zip right from the ear or the eye to the amygdala in the limbic system. It's a knee-jerk reaction that allows us to react quickly, often in the face of potential danger. In other words, that slower high-road cortex route allows thinking about feeling, while the quick, low-road shortcut allows instant emotional reaction. The stomach flip that happens when you see your ex, or the 10,000 pee breaks you gotta take before you give a speech, or your heart racing after a really good kiss. It's hard to argue with the fact that we often feel emotions with our bodies as much as with our brains. And you can thank your autonomic nervous system the next time you're freaking out or trying to calm yourself down. Perhaps you recall when we talked about the roles of the sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of our autonomic nervous systems. The sympathetic Sympathetic division is what arouses you in a crisis. It makes you hyper-aware, makes your heart rate and breathing increase, spikes your blood sugar for extra energy, all that fun stuff. It's like a pit crew readying you for action. And once it's done its job and the danger has passed, the parasympathetic division steps in and talks you back down from the edge, slowing down your heart and breathing rates and shutting off those stress hormones, generally rubbing your back and being all, everything's gonna be okay, baby. What you need is the right degree of arousal for the situation. For example, if you're navigating through fast-moving traffic in an unfamiliar city, you'll want to hit the sweet spot of optimal arousal that allows you to focus your attention without either freaking out or getting all mellow and sleepy. Like we said before, there's a lot of overlap in the symptoms of different emotions. If you monitor the heart rate, breathing, and perspiration of a group of people who are watching 3 different movies, you probably couldn't tell who was watching the grisly horror movie, an angry fight, or a hot sex scene. Fear, anger, and sexual arousal often deliver some of the same biological signals, but those emotions certainly feel different to the people experiencing them, just as they usually look different to others observing their expressions. And though differences in emotion can appear subtle or even undetectable on brain scans, many of them do show distinctive patterns. For most people, positive feelings tend to show more activity in the left frontal lobe, while negative ones show up more in the right frontal lobe. And someone who's very afraid will show increased activity in the amygdala, our more primal emotional center. Emotions are fascinating things that drive us to do all sorts of brilliant and weird stuff. Understanding them and being able to read them both in yourself and others is vital if you want to make it through even an average day. But misreading your emotions or someone else's can be confusing, even dangerous, and it's just one of the things that we'll be looking at next week. Today, you learned about what emotions are, how they work, and why we need them. We talked about the James Longa, canon bard, Schachter and Singer, and Zian's theories, and we also looked at the relationship between cognition and emotion and how the autonomic nervous system mobilizes emotion. Thanks for watching, especially to all of our subbable subscribers who make Crash Course possible. To find out how you can...
all that. Yeah, thank you. Crash Course is an awesome channel. I encourage you to go ahead and check it out on YouTube. Gives you a little, well, just like it sounds, crash course on just about any topic you can imagine. And what are we going to talk about here? We were talking about stress. You know, I'm trying to think of the most stressful times in my life. And I remember, maybe you guys can think of your own times. Let's talk about them here. Okay, I'm just going to come out with it here. I was up in Vermont. I was taking care of my baby daughter alone. She was between 1 and 2 years old at that time. And her mother was out of state training for a new job for Border Patrol, which has now become ICE, okay? Now, I had just had a back surgery, so I was having some trouble moving around. And I found out some information that forced me to file for divorce. And you would not believe how fast weight will fall off of your body when you're heavily stressed. Now, I know some people handle it differently. I'm tired of hearing this argument, well, everybody's an individual. Yeah, but a lot of people behave the same. So let's go with what's under the bell curve, the big titty hump. I went from 250 pounds down to 220 quickly with no real work. And then after that, I was at the gym and riding the bike and all and lost some more and got down to around 200 again. But at 6'5", that's a bit skinny. I mean, I was strapping, but I was skinny. So anyway, that stress had me so worked up because I sensed the coming disintegration of my family that I would lay on the couch at night, which is where I slept because it was across from my daughter's room, and I was just sort of weirdly paranoid at that point, that I would wring my hands. I mean, imagine that. You're laying there. You want to go to sleep. You know, it's time to sleep. You got to get up with your daughter at 7 a.m. She wakes up on the dot every morning. Wringing your hands, just trying to squeeze some of that extra energy out. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what that was. I haven't done it since. But you make it through, don't you? Somehow you make it through. And damage is done, in my opinion. I always hear this thing, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Not really. I think a lot of stuff that doesn't kill you makes you weaker. It begins to beat you down until it gets you to the end of your life. But emotionally, psychologically, sure, I can buy that. If you can make it through a lot of traumatic times, you're going to be better off. You know, a person who's been through, this is the whole idea behind basic training for the military. Andrew's been in, you know what it's like. They tried to drive us crazy in Air Force basic training. It wasn't the physical part that was that hard. Marines and Army did much more physical stuff than Air Force does. But they paint the windows shut. They paint them. You can't see outside. And you're folding clothes all day Saturday, all day Sunday. And they're knocking them off if they're not perfect. And what they're trying to do is see if they can get you to snap. Because you can't have people snapping. That's dangerous to a force. And, the people that could hang, and those that can't either get washed back or kicked out. And that's stress, and that's imposed stress. I think most stress that we feel is stress we put upon ourselves. And why is it there? It's there because of expectations. You expect yourself to level up your job in society and whatever it is that you're out there to do. And once you set that expectation, chances are you're going to be aiming pretty high. If you hit below the mark, automatically you're starting to feel like a failure. And you completely forget that it was you that set the mark. And you can move the mark. And I am talking about tricking yourself right now. But why wouldn't you? Because stress will kill you. Motivational speakers like Les Brown say, aim for the moon. If you miss, you're still among the stars. Well, not really, because stars are kind of far away. But, you might end up around Neptune or something. But, it's all in good fun. And his heart's in the right place. How are you going to handle stress? Some people work out. I used to be able to basically kill any stress I had with a long run or a workout lifting weights. I mean, really, it really wouldn't matter what it was. I would just exhaust my body to the point where it was either hurting so bad that I couldn't think about anything else, or there was no energy left. I was just done. And that works, but what about when you can't do that? Like in the situation I'm in now, just like the situation Wayne is talking about, we can't go jog. I can't go to the gym and lift weights. I'm liable to be paralyzed within a year from the waist down if I don't get something done quick. So, and in the weird spot I am where I have 2 moves coming in 3 months, that's not possible. There's not enough time for the surgery and recovery. So I have to wait till I get to my 3rd spot. If you can't do that, how are you going to deal with it? This is where your psychological stress management is going to become absolutely critical. And you can use medications, and you can use meditation, and you can use thought control. And they talk about how, I was listening earlier to the difference, and I think he said it in that last video, of people who have a positive outlook on life. And, William James was also a fan of this, that if you smile, force yourself, literally force yourself to smile, the emotion can and will follow that. Now, I know it sounds stupid, but it does work. Not a lot of people do it, but it does work. If you force yourself to smile for 30 seconds or a minute, you cannot help but feel some of the joy that comes along with what would have normally made you smile anyway. And that's just a matter of simple operant conditioning, like B.F. Skinner proposed and showed in the labs. And if you're that low and you can't figure out a way out and you don't have any good drugs left because Rick did them all, you may want to just try smiling. And I can also tell you this. Meditation works. I've only used it twice, and it kind of scared the shit out of me because it made me feel drunk. But I am once again going to share in the chat room a link. Now, I had tried meditation probably 10 times in the past, and I couldn't make it work. I could not shut the thoughts out of my head to make meditation work. It was always being interrupted by something. Let me pull this up and then grab the shortcut to it. But this worked. And I found out that the way for me to make it work was to be real tired coming in. That helped a lot because it helps you shut your mind down a little. All right, copy. That's nothing hard. And what I love about him is he forgives you. It's like you forgive yourself if you fail the first few times. Now I'm not going to sit here and talk about meditation all night, but this is something you need to give a try. And just see. Maybe it helps you, maybe it doesn't. But considering that it's free and considering that there are about 15,000 studies out there right now that talk about how great it is for your health and well-being and how easy it is once you learn how to do it, it's worth a look. So I want you to seriously consider meditation. You don't have to sit there and be one of those yoga guys sitting on a cloud with the crossed knees. You can just chill in a chair. The whole trick to it is shutting down your thoughts. And the way they normally have you do that is focus on your breathing.